everybody. Welcome to day 2 of Canadian Film Fest. I love it. Thank you so much. We've got a big day today. And before we begin, please, I'm going to do a land acknowledgement. So as the Canadian Film Fest, we acknowledge that the very name we carry sits within the legacy of a country founded on the displacement of Indigenous peoples. And we'd like to acknowledge that we're gathering in the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. Toronto, the land we're on today, has been a place of storytelling and community for thousands of years, long before the idea of Canada ever existed. This land we're on today is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and it remains home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. As a community of filmmakers and storytellers, I encourage us all to recognize the responsibility that we carry in how we tell stories and whose voices we uplift. In this spirit, we would love to highlight the Shine Network's pact, protocol and commitment towards truth and reconciliation. Is there a slide behind me? There is. PACT is an online course that was developed through the Shine Network in partnership with the National Screen Institute. It's an online course designated to empower non-Indigenous screen professionals to foster healthy relationships for building with Indigenous partners and team members. It's led by Indigenous women, and it calls on the screen industry to honor Indigenous sovereignty, protocol, and truth in both process and practice. You can learn more at their website. We've got a QR code on the slide there. And you can also make a donation towards Indigenous women in the Screen Arts Bursary. It's shinenetwork.ca. Go Jennifer Podemski. We encourage you to join us in continuing to learn, listen, and unlearn, holding space for Indigenous stories to be told by Indigenous voices with integrity, care, and respect. I did my pact last week. It took me probably about longer than it would most because I went back and I have a very short attention span and I really wanted to do well on the test because that's the kind of person I am. But it took me probably about 50 or 60 minutes. So I really encourage you to check it out. And without further ado, let's get our panel on. We're here today to celebrate Global Voices, Canadian Heart, International Storytelling in Film. This has been brought to you by our co-presenters, ConneKt Film, ConneKt Film is a film community-focused platform bringing together all industry resources and information under one roof. It's all the programming opportunities and funding deadlines in one place. Thank you, Anya. Anya Vagabova is a Ukrainian filmmaker based in Toronto and the founder and CEO of ConneKt Film. She found the industry challenging to navigate when she first arrived to Canada, but was grateful to receive some key mentorship, and it's inspired her to give back through ConneKt. So passionate about inclusivity and innovation, she champions diverse voices in global storytelling, and we're going to see that action through this special panel that she's put together for us, featuring some of our filmmakers from this year. Thank you, Yazmeen, Amir, Celestina, and Tarique. And I'll let you I'll give you the mic back, Anya.
Thank you so much, Jen. Give it up for Jen! Woo! And a huge thank you for the whole CFF team as well. Honestly, this panel feels so special because, as was mentioned, Ukrainian filmmakers, sometimes I feel like I don't belong. When I just came to Canada, I felt like I had to fit in. But the true magic is in our uniqueness, in our personal experiences, and that's what I want to discuss today. So give it up to each and every of our panelists. We're going to go one by one. So Yazmeen Kanji, a film director and founder of Films with a Cause. I do want to mention that you should absolutely check out her short film that is screening tomorrow at 11 a.m. called One Day. Okay, so Amir, Kahnamouee. So he is an amazing writer, and you should check out his film that is screening tomorrow at 1:30 p.m. called Please After You. It's wonderful story, and especially I just want to say we all are coming from totally different backgrounds. For example, Amir is Irano-Canadian, I'm Ukrainian-Canadian, and so on. So we're gonna really dive into how each of our backgrounds really bring that, our unique perspective in Canadian film industry. So, Tarique, Qayumi, love it. Writer-director, and I do want to mention that his feature film is premiering tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. It's Conceiving Clara. It's wonderful work that is very different from his previous film, so you should absolutely check it out. Thank you. And Celestina Aleobua is an actress, writer, director, and producer based in Toronto, Canada. And her short film is premiering on Friday at 4 p.m. It's called Tina, When Will You Marry? And it's about, the pressure for us to get married and different perspectives, so you should absolutely check it out. Okay, I love it. Let's get into the real questions. Why we all got together today. So we're gonna start from Celestina. Okay, so you have a unique story, and I wanna know what brought you to the Canadian film industry, and how have your background and personal experience shaped your storytelling voice and approach to filmmaking?
Thank you, Anya. So grateful to be part of this panel. I agree with you. We need to celebrate diverse voices in Canada. There's so many diverse cultures here, so it's something that I'm looking forward to seeing more on screen. So I am originally from Nigeria, but I grew up in South Africa. And growing up there, I kind of always felt that I didn't belong. I don't know if you know the history of South Africa, but it's quite recent that they gained their freedom from colonization. So for South Africans, it was kind of like, okay, we don't want anybody coming into the country and enjoying what we fought for. So that was my experience growing up there, and I knew that I wasn't gonna stay there for a long time. But while I was there, I really enjoyed just performing. So I did a lot of theater and stuff like that. But when I eventually left South Africa, I moved to Canada. But because I was very good at school, I was like, you know what, it doesn't make sense to study to be an actor. I'm just gonna study to be a doctor. So that's what I did for 4 years, but I knew I was not gonna use my degree. You're laughing because I'm sure this is a very immigrant story. And because life was kind of easy for me in that regard, I assumed for my acting, it was just gonna happen for me as well. So I was working at a restaurant for many years, and I was like, somebody's gonna come in here, look at me and be like, I'm gonna put you in something. But it never ended up happening for me. So for immigrants, once you go through the school process here in Canada, you have 3 years to get a proper job in order to stay. So the restaurant wasn't a proper job, so basically I had to go back to school. I went back to school for interactive media management, and in one of the classes, we were learning about storyboarding. So that was when I wrote my first film called The People of Sand. And it was such a huge concept. It was just imagining what Africa would have been had we not been colonized. And I was so in love with this story, and spoke to my professor, and I was like, I feel that I haven't been creative for so many years, and I want to figure out how to bring this story to life, but it's bigger than me in a sense. And he essentially told me, figure out a way to do this, because if your creative energy is telling you that this is what you should do, this is what you should do. And so I ended up shooting that film in South Africa with my family. So my family ended up helping me shoot that film. And that's how I started in the film industry. Now I have 4 shorts that I've done, and I continue trying to pull from my culture, personal experiences, and also as an actress, I always felt that I would audition for roles where I didn't feel personally connected to the story. So in becoming a filmmaker, I've been able to write the stories that are important to me, that I want to see myself in, and also give that opportunity to other Black actors that I know as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. I often feel like, you know, if we're telling a very specific, especially culturally specific story, other people will not understand, but that is so far from true. So I love the quote from Amir and Aya, if you don't tell your stories, who will? So I really hope that by the end of this panel, you will feel empowered and confident enough to tell your stories, because the world needs your stories. And Celestina, I've seen your work. It's wonderful. And it truly is universal stories. You know, like, for example, Tina, when will you marry? We all feel like, as women, there is a pressure to marry. And like a clock ticking. So I feel like no matter, you know, you might be talking about your own culture, but as a Ukrainian, yeah, there is a lot of pressure out there. Yeah, so thank you so much for sharing your stories with the world. And everyone who is, you know, on 3-year period to get a real job, and everyone who is fighting for your permanent residency, you're seen. We feel you. And you got this. Okay, so Tarique, as Afghan Canadian director, your stories, especially targeting 14, especially Black Kites, are hitting home. And it's about, I love your stories because it's not about circumstances, you know. Ukraine is torn with war right now, but all the news that you turn on, it's all about the war. But can we talk about people first? You know, talking about people living everyday lives and having hopes. And, you know, your work really brings that hope even during the darkest times. So tell me more about your experiences, your background, and how did that shape your approach to filmmaking and your voice?
Oh, wow, okay. Thank you, first of all, for watching my films. I really, really appreciate it. It's amazing to be at this festival. It's amazing to be seen by you and having your film being seen. So thank you for that opportunity. And I feel like my journey as a storyteller started when we escaped Afghanistan. I was around 7, and we got we had to, Afghanistan was occupied at the time, and we had, there's a lot of pressure on my family. They would, my father was fighting with the Mujahideen, and I was at school. They would ask me to come in front of the principal's office, and they'd be like, "Where's your father?" And I would be like, I was told to lie, and I'd be like, "Oh, my father's a coward. He ran away." And then they'd be like, "Okay," and then they'd like ask more information. I was like, "I don't know," and then I would go back. So, there was this kind of pressure, and so one night they were like, "Hey, so you're gonna get in the back of this car, and you're gonna now join your father in Pakistan with your mother," and that's how, like, this the story was the inciting incident of the story. And we pretended we were going to a wedding in the outskirts of Afghanistan. And once we got there, we got in the back of a truck, and then we were shuttled across the border. But at any point, these Russian attack helicopters could have like shot us down. And we were stopped by thieves and who stole stuff. We were stopped by Mujahideen who pulled young boys into the war, and I was too young, luckily. And so when we got to Pakistan, I just carried that journey with me throughout my whole life, and I didn't know what to do with it. And growing up in Canada, I was like, now that I look back, obviously I was a traumatized little boy. And, you know, I got into a lot of fights and things like that, and I was misbehaved a lot, and I wasn't really into school. And then I had this teacher, Miss Zabo, in grade 8, who was like, and I hated English so much. I had this thick accent, and I couldn't, like, communicate very well. And she was like, we're going to do this free writing exercise. Everyone pull out a piece of paper, and then you're going to then she wrote some word on the board, and she's write associations with that word. And then I was like, writing. And so then she went around the class, and everyone had like 3 or 4 words written down, and I had like a page. And it was like, whoa. And that was it. I think at that point I knew that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to write. I wanted to write one way or another and tell the stories of my people. So
I love it. This is like, you know, this is such a beautiful story with a lot of struggle, with a lot of resilience, but that's what makes us, right? Thank you so much for sharing. It's also scary how different our stories are, but how similar and familiar they are. Coming back to this side, Amir, your stories are also immigrant stories, but for example, Please After You, absolutely, we're gonna do a shameless plug. Please check it out, genuinely, it's such a beautiful story. I just watched the trailer, okay, but you know, just having, dealing with, you know, some problems at home, dealing with political asylum, and kind of seeing that from a perspective of everyday life of a family. I think this is beautiful because I want to see how people live in those, you know, in those challenging circumstances and really get to know them rather than the circumstances. Again, coming back to people first. And I love how beautifully you've put together the work and really showcasing, yes, it is an immigrant story. Yes, they are challenging circumstances, but we also have fun. We also have mundane stories. We also, you know, and just kind of showing immigrants as everyday rather than, you know, there is a stereotype. There is a certain thing for this role, you know, and I feel like a lot of actors are dealing with that they have to have a specific role in the film. But I was like, no, they can be just living their lives and being friends, and you know, they can have a lot of lead roles and so on. So tell me how the experience writing Please After You was, and tell me more about your experience as Irani Canadian writer is. Oh, yeah. Go for it.
I think this works.
You can have two. You can have two.
Thank you. No, I've always been drawn to character-driven stories. I'm not really interested in plot as much. And the first iteration of that draft was just a straight-up immigration drama. And I felt like I was sitting down and inventing the story as I was going along. And it just didn't feel authentic. It didn't feel true. And it wasn't until I started to reflect on my own memories, thinking about my family coming to Montreal, and I would think about the kind of stuff they talked about. And it was rarely about the war or the revolution. They loved just sharing funny anecdotes about what it was like to assimilate into this new culture. And I wanted to pay homage to that. So I thought, I don't want to write a straight up dramatic immigration story. I want to do it as a comedy, because a lot of the stories they would tell were kind of funny despite really tragic, unfortunate circumstances. And that's how the idea for Please After You came about. And in terms of like my foray into writing, especially, you know, I come from an Iranian family, and you know, you tell your parents you want to become a filmmaker or an actor, and then you could just see the nervousness go up. So I did my, you know, I would tell my dad, like, I want to go into creative writing. And he would say, well, why don't you study marketing? You know, it's business and it's kind of creative. Like, it was always that kind of caveat. So I studied business in my undergrad, and then for my last summer, I wanted to write a screenplay. And it was kind of like a shameful thing, because you don't want to really admit to people that you're writing a screenplay, because nothing can come of it. So I had a job as a video game tester, and I got laid off on my second day because there wasn't enough work. So I would just go to the library every day, pretending to go to work, and I would write my feature screenplay, not knowing what I was doing. And by the end of the summer, I had a feature screenplay, and no one knew about it. They thought I was going to work on this thing. And come December, my dad asked for my T4s, and then I came up with some kind of sly lie saying, oh, yeah, I'm going to do my taxes again this year. And I just finally told them like 2 or 3 years ago that, that summer where I didn't earn any money, I was writing a feature screenplay, which is a story in and of itself of it's so specific, like you're mentioning. You can't do any kind of research in a book or online to get a story like that. It's gotta come from the bottom up.
Yeah, beautifully put. Yes, absolutely. I love that. And there is so much comedy in it. Every time I call my grandma, I swear she's cooking. And then the siren can go off. And I was like, please go to the bomb shelter. And she's like, no, I have to finish borscht. And this is like the most grandma. But this is what the stories are, right? We are humans and we love that. And we create stories. We don't create them. We observe them most of the time and writing down. And, coming back, I actually love Tarique's in Black Kite. He blends live action documentary and animation. And his animation, it's like what I imagined the life would be, what my hopes are and so on. It's such a... Anyway, so it's like what is happening in our head, what we observe, and that's the best stories you can write. So Yazmeen, tell me. So I feel like all the filmmakers think that they have to come through very traditional route. You go to film school, you take classes, and then you go and make films. With you, it's more social work, it's more activism, and then you came from that, and you've done a lot of research even during your studies. So can you tell me how was your experience, going and actually studying all of that, and maybe your research during your university helped to push to make films about it? So tell me what your journey to now.
Sure. Oh my gosh, how much time do you have?
Tell me your life story.
Tell me your life story. So I went to the University of Toronto for peace, conflict, and justice studies and equity studies, and I minored in cinema theory. And so I was very, nerd. And I wanted to make a doc. I know that was something that I'd been thinking about, ever since even high school. And my family did a lot of work with Syrian newcomers in the resettlement process around 2016 when I was just getting into university. And so I was hearing these stories, and then in high school there was a lot of rhetoric that was really xenophobic and Islamophobic and concerning. And so that, I think, was my first jumping point into a doc from, feeling like I was in the middle of hearing what true stories were coming out of the resettlement, and, the rhetoric at in my high school that was really disturbing that I didn't at the time know how to confront yet. So that was my first film that I finished and just completely by myself, DSLR. I shot it, edited it, produced it, and that was, really great experience. And similar to what you're saying, that doc was very much about, it's called From Syria to Hope. So it's very much about the hopes for the future, and less so around, the story of the journey itself. Or with my films, I always try to focus more so on the joy and what's next. And I think there's really valid stories and reflecting on experiences of trauma as well. But I think for myself as a filmmaker, I gravitate more towards the joys and the humor, and being able to process difficult subject matter, through authentic human experiences that maybe we can all relate to, even if we're not refugees. And so, yeah, I made that doc, and I didn't know anyone in the film space, so I was, just going to panels at university and going up to any filmmaker that would speak to me. And luckily, one of the filmmakers I approached was Charles Officer, rest in power, and he was taken to what I was saying immediately, which I was very surprised by. And I'd run into him at events that I was interning at for Canadian Screen Week, and eventually I started working with his production company, Cane Sugar Filmworks, as the assistant and project manager, which I did for several years, and that was an incredible opportunity to be opened up to the Canadian film industry and to understand, Canadian cinema. And I think from that really that just helped me understand the system better, because I didn't know anyone. I had no idea, honestly, I didn't watch that much Canadian film, and so I think being able to meet filmmakers was really important to me, and hear about the journeys that others were going on, just because it started to feel less impossible and more achievable. And and then I eventually started working as the advocacy lead at BIPOC TV and Film, because I do come from that, as you were saying, more activist and academic policy-oriented background. And yes, and I continue to make films, and I don't know how much else to say.
No, I love it. And honestly, thank you so much for all your work. Please check out Films Was a Cause and everything they're doing. It's incredible, genuinely. I feel like step by step, we are changing the industry. We are changing the narratives. There was a lot of topics of, some traumas that we are going, and we can change the script. We can change people's perspective on circumstances, on events, and now, even, I love how you're, talking about hope, because I feel like there is a lot of stigma, there's a lot of stereotypes around war, refugees, newcomers, and by showing those, maybe through comedy, maybe through those mundane, maybe through hopeful narratives, we can change the script, we can change the narrative. And filmmakers are truly such powerful wizards, magicians, because they can change how people view everything. Because we love stories, we connect with people, we connect to stories. So love it, love it. What a great start. I'm empowered, I feel confident. I know it's also morning, so I hope you're feeling the energy in the room, even though we're talking about some hard stuff. Thank you, guys. Woo, okay. We got through that. No, genuinely, guys, thank you so much for sharing such vulnerable stories on the screen. I know it's probably not the easiest thing, and really showing, putting your heart on, on the hands and so on. Let's talk about co-productions. I know right now, everyone, I want to create a story. Where do I get money? And a co-production is one of the ways. So anyone, whoever wants to take it. So co-productions with different countries can serve as bridges between cultures and industries. What are some of the biggest challenges you faced when working on co-productions, and how have this cross-border collaborations enriched your creative process or final projects? Tarique, maybe you wanna, because Tarique actually worked in Afghanistan, and he has a beautiful career, very flourishing, and then he came to Canada and started to create films there. So do you wanna tell me more about it?
Okay, so and the story continues that I went to film school because I had to get permission to make films, because my parents were like, what is this? Be a doctor. And so I got permission, and then after I got a job in Afghanistan, and I decided to go back to reconnect with my roots. And I thought this is going to be amazing, and I was there in 2011, 2015, or end of 14. I just left at the end, and in those years it was beautiful, because I got to make TV shows that were watched by millions of people. I made Afghanistan's first docudrama series, and then I made a TV show like a cop show. And then the showrunner left, and it was Afghan, so it was really chaotic, and so then I had to like rewrite like episodes and do all these crazy things while we're shooting. I was writing at night, and in the morning we would shoot. It was a great experience, and then I was the EP for Sesame Street, Afghanistan, for 2 seasons, and they're just doing a documentary. And that's probably the best thing I ever worked on. Stop. Period. And that was like the heights of my career that I will not see. I mean, we had like 10 million people watch it, and whole families watched it because the literacy rate's so high in Afghanistan. It's like around 80% for women and 68% for men. And the Taliban also, threatened us, and they said, "Oh, we blew up those Buddha statues, and now you bring these other icons here." I was like, really? Alamos? So yeah, that was my experience there. And then before I left, I made ConneKt, and I brought that back with me. But I went through like, I don't know if this speaks of every co-production, but yeah, we survived like 11 different attacks, and you just couldn't leave because the Afghans are so resilient that even though I was like booking my airplane ticket, I'd be like, I'll just go to work to pack up, my office, and then I'm just gonna get out. And then you see them all like going back to life as normal. You're like, oh, I'm a coward if I leave my friends behind. So then, that's and just stayed. And in the end, I left Afghanistan, and that's when I made ConneKt, because the ConneKt was like. I needed to do something for myself. Everything was for the TV station there, and that one was a passion project. But those, I can't speak to. I don't think I spoke really to your question of international co-productions. I have tried to put one through Telefilm. They're extremely complicated. Anyone who's done it is a hero. You need 3 times the paperwork with lawyers and this, and you need money to come in first from one country, and no country wants to come in first, and our project is still in limbo after all these years. But I could tell you the other thing is, like, recently I shot the short film through I got Canada Arts Council funding, and I went to Tajikistan to shoot it, and then it was like really amazing because I just living in Afghanistan for 4 years, but I go back to Tajikistan, one of the poorest countries in Asia. They used like real Afghan refugees living there to make this film, and it was, I'll tell you what, the country has like one RE camera, and it's not a mini, so we had to fly in the camera. Sandbags, we made our own sandbags where we put sand in a bag, and by the end of the shoot, they all kind of like fell apart, and it's like, that's why those sandbags cost so much money. And my gaffer, he's a guy from Germany, he came in and he like went to the bazaar and he bought like silk, and he was like, oh, this is gonna be perfect. Like, so we just created a whole bunch of our own equipment and stuff like that. And I just think it's like, if you're from a country, and this is how I think Canadian storytelling is changing, please go to your home country and make a film and bring it back. And even if you're like second, third generation and you like don't speak your language and whatever, just still go, because your point of view and perspective is really interesting. And I anyways, I just think it's a beautiful experience that to go out there as Canadians, because we're not a melting pot, right? We're this, are we more like a mosaic or a salad bowl, right? All the parts are separate.
We're potluck.
We're potluck, yeah. And just, I think that's what I would like to see more, and to go out there and make your films and bring it back here. Yeah.
Anyone wants to add anything?
Sure. So, I haven't made a co-production yet, but I am planning on doing that. There's this project that I've been developing for 2 years called Jaded, and it's about 2 Nigerian women in North America trying to restructure their lives because they've realized their lives as a result of pressures from family and culture, and it's not really their decisions that have landed them where they are. So this series has some scenes that will be shot in Nigeria. So in just doing our research in trying to figure out how to get funding and which studio to pitch this to, there's a certain devaluing of projects outside of North America. So in Nigeria, I would say Netflix and Prime would probably give you maybe 1/10 of the money that they'd give you if you're here. So there's also not enough of our representation here to prove that your project will be a success. So you kind of have an issue trying to figure out how to structure your pitch and where exactly to pitch, because if you pitch it on the continent, you're not going to get the money that you need to shoot the scenes here. If you pitch it here, there's no project that you can base your film on to say that this will for sure work and that the combined audiences of North America and your country is just going to make it work. So that's the issue that I am finding with the project that I'm working on. But I just believe in it so much. I believe that it will happen some way, somehow. But I'm really hoping that we have a lot more representation of diverse cultures here, just so that we have that as a proof of concept for people that are going to come and pitch their projects to funding agents here.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your experience. Best of luck with Jaded. We're already excited. Are we excited? Okay. Fantastic. Terry, quick question. What is the biggest difference between Afghan film industry versus Canadian?
Well, right now it's like back then when it was existing, right now it's gone. Like they've completely shut it down. The biggest thing was that in terms of production, things would change on a dime. Like you would go to a location, it would shut down. I had an actor who did 7 episodes, and he was like asking for an advance. And I went to the TV station. I was like, you gotta give this guy an advance. As soon as he got his money, he was out of the country. So we had to rewrite the last 2 episodes. Like those are the challenges you kind of like live with, and so things are very dynamic. But it really made me like a stronger, I think, director here, because when things happen here and they're crazy, I'm just like, it'll be okay. We'll solve it. So so I think that's the main difference in terms of just production and things like that, and also like you take things for granted. Like I remember we had discussions like whether someone's gonna like a cop, a female cop is gonna wear pants or not at the TV station, like discussions like that. And that was daring to be like, we're gonna do this. She's gonna wear pants, and yeah. So it was challenging, and also the country is very conservative, and it's a beautiful place. I mean, and I don't want to. To perpetuate any kind of negativity or stereotypes or anything, but there's, actors aren't really looked upon like, in filmmaking isn't like a high art, let's put it that way. It's a very low art. So for any actor to do something, especially women, it's very difficult, When I first made the docudrama series, we did a lot of reenactments, and a lot of my actors would get, accosted in the streets that they thought they were the real people in it. So it was incredible working in an environment where belief is so high, people aren't so jaded, but also it can be very dangerous for actors. So you have to be very brave as a filmmaker as well.
And you made it, so that's incredible. And also, thank you so much for sharing your guys' experiences. Like, it's so valuable to hear everyone's experiences, different industries as well, and how it works.
I can speak very briefly, not necessarily to co-productions, but to the cross-border collaboration aspect of it. I actually went to Nigeria to shoot last summer, and well, my collaborators were, Nigerian Canadian, but even with that, there were actually quite a few challenges that came up, in the field that I didn't anticipate. And I think that something just as a piece of advice, I suppose, when you're going somewhere, even if you are from, that country of origin, that always connecting with the locals or your producer in that region beforehand is really important, to be prepared and to know what you're walking into, and yeah, that's really all I'll say about that, is just the preparation before you make the travel is really crucial.
And while you're holding a microphone. Okay, so let's talk about global perspectives in Canadian cinema. So with Canadian cinema evolving to include more diverse voices, how do you think international storytelling is reshaping the Canadian film landscape, and what can the industry do to further push inclusivity both on and off screen?
Well, I think it is really incredible to see all of us on this panel with such different life experiences, and at the Canadian Film Festival. And I mean, for me, most of my favorite, Canadian films are from the diaspora, and stories that people have told about their own communities. And I think that's the part of this, the Canadian Global Voices Canadian heart, is it feels rooted, where we are, but and we're able to learn something really specific about someone else's experiences. But I guess I'll take the opportunity to bring up Films with a Cause, which I began as a collective when I was at U of T, and then it evolved into a consultancy for authentic storytelling practices. And we very recently published a guide called Back to Ones about the use of what we call specificity consultants, which include cultural consultants, accessibility coordinators, or really any role that involves elevating the production experience from people from equity-deserving communities, and elevating the authenticity and the specificity of those experiences on screen. And so if you're interested, check it out at filmswithacause.com/backtoones. It's a very easy to read guide. I think what I'm trying to do with this work is show that, equity and inclusion work is not separate from thinking about the success of a project, or even just when I'm thinking about, the Canadian film industry more generally, and how it's sometimes perceived to be a risk to, work with, equity deserving communities sometimes, or not give, additional seasons, which is really frustrating. But it's really connecting with the audiences that are out there that are, aching for this representation that they haven't seen before, and figuring out how to directly connect with those audiences that, if it's marketed correctly, if they're able to access that content, they will be there. They will buy the tickets. They will, there will be the views. And so sometimes I feel like there is a disconnect, that equity and inclusion is a conversation over here, and producers and the success of a production and distribution is sometimes over here, and we really need to bridge that and see how we can elevate our work in our industry by reaching out and to the audiences that are really hoping for better representation. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah. Lovely. I love that. I have one more question. We're gonna answer it briefly, but I do want to mention that let's support Canadian films. You are coming to a Canadian Film Fest, great step. What are the other things can we do? Can we watch more of CBC Jam? Can we watch, how can we support Canadian filmmakers, Canadian films on daily basis? It's not just a one-off thing. So if there is more that you can do in your own community, that would be amazing. And tell your friends, there is a lot of need to support Canadian films, both financially, showing up through just watching their content, coming to the premieres like that. If we can have this change happen, and if we can watch, maybe things at home more, and have that more family viewing that's not in every culture is, if we can do it on a daily basis, I feel like we can really support our community and filmmakers, which is why we're here. Okay, so the last question before we go into the audience questions, it's about audiences. So as filmmakers telling culturally specific stories, how do you stay true to the authenticity of your roots while ensuring that these narratives resonate with audiences beyond your community and connect on a global scale? That's such a question that a lot of people, like, how do I reach past my community? Anyone wants to take it?
I can.
Sure.
Yeah, that's pretty specific to my experience making my feature film. And when I wrote it, I didn't have anyone telling me what to do, what to write. I just got to write it. Once it got optioned, that's when producers got involved and execs, and they all had opinions. And the tendency is, because they're looking at the project from a different perspective. They're looking at it from, all right, this is a product I need to sell, I need to distribute. And so they're like, can we tweak the story? Can we add this character? And really the underlying theme between all of those changes is they're trying to broaden it. They're trying to broaden the plot lines, the comedy, and they think by doing that, it's going to become more universal, but that's actually not true. I've found, at least with my writing, the more specific I am, even if it's culturally specific, the more universal it becomes. And it's not an intuitive thought to have, but I think that's what we need to do, is encourage people to be very specific. Because even if you're watching something and the person you're watching doesn't look like you or sound like you, chances are they're going to have the same experiences you had.
I love it. And often something that was a discovery for me, a lot of the circumstances might be different, but the reaction can be the same. For example, I had a person who I was talking to that went through sexual harassment, and the situations are very different, but our trauma response was the same. Dissociation, sometimes depression, and a lot of the other things. So it's very interesting that no matter what the culture is, no matter what the things, we are connecting on a more emotional level. So I love that. Thank you so much. Do we have any questions? Love it. Yes, please.
Hey guys, my name is Juan. I'm an actor. I want to know, there's no right or wrong question with this, but you as directors, what's your take when it comes to make a story with the actor? Do you guys give him the freedom to discover while shooting, or do you guys have a very specific kind of tone in what you wrote, and are you guys precious of your words, or are you guys letting the actor also bring something from their own experiences into the story, or it depends on each again, no right or wrong. I just want to, yeah.
I'll answer first. I love talking about working with actors. It's so fun. So my short film premiering tomorrow, One Day, is about an Indo-Caribbean Muslim teenager who daydreams to find her inner confidence. And we cast Rebecca Black, who is Indo-Guyanese. And so it was really exciting for us to be able to shape this character according to also her own experiences, which kind of goes back to that cultural specificity part as well, because I'm not full Indo-Guyanese, and there's so many different ways to experience an Indo-Guyanese household. And so even though I had the script, for me it was more of a blueprint, and then who whoever, you know, was cast for that role, for me, it was really important to get them to, of course, have the most authentic, you know, representation of that character as possible and be able to perform in a way that felt natural to who they were, which was also the case for supporting character Zarina, who I had her ethnicity open. So it was pretty much whoever fit the energy of the character the best. We would shape, you know, that character according to her own personal backstory. So she's Ethiopian, so we created a bit of a backstory to understand, you know, the personality that she has and, you know, the family that she might have come from, which I think, if I do say so myself, created a really great dynamic on screen because it felt authentic, because it came from, you know, parts of the real backgrounds of the actors themselves.
Do you want to end?
Sure. Yeah, I think I love working with actors. It's my favorite part of the whole process. And I think everyone has a different approach, and you'll meet a lot of different directors with a lot of different takes on this. and that's what makes our industry fascinating and beautiful. The way I like to work with actors is, you know, I think it's, you know, my director of photography is in the background, but I'll say, like, casting and sound design are probably, like, really the most important things in filmmaking. Sorry, Leo. but yeah, casting is, like, you know, like, man, I've had stuff that it could have gone, like, you know, amazing if I hadn't, like, messed up my casting because I just didn't know enough about it, and I still don't think I know enough about it. But once you get the right person, I give them absolute 100% freedom, and they prepare, and they become the character, and they can change words, and they can have story ideas and things like that. So I work very open, and I also do the work, and I prepare, but I will never shovel it in the actor's, you know, mind. I just let them have the freedom to do things. The only thing I do is challenge them to maybe. I like actors to come prepared to do it differently. And the only thing I watch out for is they're like, they have things mapped out. And if they're like, this is the only way it's going to go, and that's what, and if they can come in and they can be like, let's just do it wrong, and I give them the freedom to do it wrong is, I think, the cornerstone of, like, great art. Yeah. And to create a safe environment to do that is like, boom, then you got it, right? So.
Love it. Yeah, the last question.
So when any of you address the budgeting for something? So, like, for example, if none of you were becoming doctors for your families, but you still need to make a living, like, at what point do you put in your own payroll as a budget line item, or do you wait till your production makes a profit? Like, how, if you're starting out, how does that all come into it? How do you pay yourselves, and is it funding dependent, or did you all still have part-time jobs while you were doing your first project?
Yeah, I think a lot of us for a long time invest our own money in our films. I'm still at that level. And I think until I get a studio that's paying for everything, I'm not getting paid. I think that's a sacrifice that we give to the art, because a lot of the times it's sweat equity, but yeah, we're the ones that really want to see this vision come to life. So most times it's not really about the money, especially for me. I work part-time jobs, contract jobs, just to keep my dream alive. But that's the way it goes until you make it. Yeah, and I think it can take years for you to make it, but I think if you're enjoying the process and you feel like this is your destiny in life, then that sustains me. Yeah.
I would probably say that it depends on the person, because a lot of people, if it is a passion project, it's a passion project, so they would take commercials, maybe they are directing, but then they would AD in the union on bigger sets, so it really depends. If it is a passion project, usually you don't really make money. That's your passion. Okay, so the last question, in one sentence, what does the phrase global voices, Canadian hearts mean to you as a filmmaker and storyteller? Who wants to start? Just one sentence.
To me, it's redundant because Canadian voices implies international storytelling. I think we're very fortunate to have so many initiatives and so much support to tell our stories in the same can't be said in other places of the world, especially today.
Thank you so much for calling out on the name of our panel. But honestly, I, as a filmmaker, as so many other things, as a owner of ConneKt Film, I feel seen. I feel so much support from the film community, and I hope you feel the same way. Do you guys have any last words you want to add?
I agree with Amir.
Love it!
I'll just say one thing, kind of related to your question. I'm a writer. That's how I kind of got into the industry. But there are so many opportunities that are Canadian specific that I would highly encourage people to check out. The BIPOC and TV film group is excellent. I went to they had a networking thing at the CBC where it wasn't just people talking at you. You had a chance to meet producers. You had a chance to pitch. I would recommend, if you're into feature screenwriting, to check out the Whistler Film Festival Screenwriting Lab. TIFF has one as well. The advantage of pursuing these Canadian opportunities is you're not dealing with tens of thousands of other applicants. You're just dealing with Canadian applicants, so you got maybe 100, 200 competitors, for the lack of a better term. And that's really how I kind of got my break. So I would encourage people to check out those resources, and that's a really good way of getting read and getting your foot into the industry.
Yeah. On that point, if you want to make your life easier, just sign up to ConneKt Film's newsletter and social media, because we're putting everything. We're a centralized resource hub, so grants, festivals, events, workshops, jobs, everything is in one place. So check us out. I just want to give a huge shout out to CFF team. Let's give them a round of applause. And thank you so much for our panelists. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much to this wonderful panel. Awkward. Thank you. Thank you so much. You all, we just appreciate you so much sharing your stories and your voices. You are all in our hearts. And thank you, ConneKt Film, for putting this wonderful panel together.